This is just some wrestler. He doesn't know what he's fucking talking about. And I'm like, I haven't put a pair of wrestling shoes on in 4 years. That's not true. I'm not just some wrestler. I'm not part of your tribe. I'm just a wrestler who's just coming in and talking shit about jujitsu. No, that's not true. You're trying to win an argument with things that I'm not. Okay. I'm not just somebody coming in to jujitsu as a wrestler and telling you that you guys all suck. I'm not doing that at all. See, that's why labels are created. People make labels to dismiss you. So if you label me as just a wrestler, then everything I say is shit. So in no way, shape, or form am I saying that wrestling is better than jujitsu. What I have said, and this is where I think it ticks people off, we don't want to be tribalists. We don't want to try to use strawman arguments and say that people are saying things that they're not, because that's not a way to win an argument. And we don't want to win an argument with circular reasoning, because what it means is that you're not listening to what anybody's saying. You're starting with the end point. Hey everybody, I want to follow up on the video that I posted about the current like wrestling and jiu-jitsu and like the level that it's at, and the things that I was saying I think could be improved so that these super ridiculously good athletes can have high school level wrestling and really make the sport, as the whole point, right, is I want to help to make the sport better. And so what I get in is a lot of people talking to each other and talking to me on the channel, which is a good thing. I think having discussions is a good thing, right? Because unless people are just trying to like, slam their idea down your throat and not listen, right? That's different. But when people are actually having good discussions, it's great. This is what we should do as people. And so I wanted to, because I'm a teacher, right? And because I'm a professor, and because my background is in psychology, neuroscience, right? And when you get your PhD, you have to learn how to formulate arguments in ways that you can defend. And then, you have to actually take in information and be willing to listen to that information, and then what are you going to do with it, right? And what happens is that there's three things that I think is happening, right? That with these arguments that kind of dead in them, okay? And I want to help to kind of maybe you'll learn something from this. Okay. So the first one, and this is one that happens to me all the time, is what's called a straw man argument. Okay. So I'll read you some definitions of them. So what is a straw man? Okay. A straw man fallacy is the informal fallacy of refuting an argument different from the one that is actually under discussion, while not recognizing or acknowledging the distinction. Okay, so the second one is it's intentionally misrepresented proposition that is set up because it's easier to defeat than the opponent's original argument. So one that happens to me all the time is that people will be like, well, if wrestling is better than jujitsu, then why aren't wrestlers winning ADCC? And then I'm like, when did I ever say that? When did I ever say that wrestling is better than jujitsu? I've never said that. Okay, first of all, I haven't put a pair of wrestling shoes on since like 2018, 2019. I have been barefoot on mats doing jujitsu and judo. I've not been wrestling. Okay. So this is sort of related to another topic, which is well, let me finish that point. The point is that people are doing it because they don't like the argument that I brought up, which was that the wrestling in jujitsu is at a very low level. So then people are like, well, what? And they're using the 1990s like UFC one argument that like which style is the most important style for fighting. I'm not making that argument. I've never made that argument. I will never make that argument. I am a grappler who uses all sorts of styles, and what I'm trying to do is help people recognize that these things aren't as different as people want them to believe that they are. That people do that so that they can sell you shit. Okay. Like that was the whole point in that in the beginning was that the Gracies did a great job of being like jujitsu is the master style. It beats all other styles. And it's like at that time when people weren't mixed martial artists, that was true. They did fucking really well. Okay. So you can't refute like that it didn't work. I mean, Gracie was the shit, and we're all benefiting when we do jujitsu from what the Gracies showed, right? And then it was like, but I'm not making that argument. I've never made that argument. I won't make that argument because it would be dumb, because literally all I do is jujitsu. My main point is that these styles of grappling aren't all that different, but that the specialists in certain things can bring things to the table to help you. So in no way, shape, or form am I saying that wrestling is better than jujitsu. What I have said, and this is where I think it ticks people off, is that I said, no, wrestling isn't better than jiu-jitsu, but if you want to get the match to the ground, you're going to use wrestling. And you can see how effective it is when a good wrestler like Dorian Oliveras, who's only 17 years old, I think, or whatever it is, he's a high school boy, can come in and out wrestle to the ground, because that's what he did, a bunch of grown ass men who were pretty saucy. And then after they got there, then he used jujitsu. I said in my video that I posted that the person needs to know wrestling and jujitsu. I never said that they only need to know how to know wrestling. And I never said that Dorian is only using wrestling. I said he used classic wrestling to get it to the ground. Okay, that's what he did. That's true. He did use classic wrestling to get it to the ground. And he is a very good wrestler. Okay. He's not the best wrestler, though, that's ever existed or whatever, because the next weekend he got freaking lat dropped by doing the exact same things that he was doing in ADCC, but in a wrestling tournament against boys his own age. Okay. So I saw him in ADCC trials and I was watching him and he's awesome, but he'd get in on doubles and he'd come up out of them up around the waist. And I was like, oh, don't do that. You know, as a coach, I'm like, no, because he's going to get lat dropped. And literally the next weekend, he did the same thing because he was running people off the mat in ADCC, freaking, you know, getting in on doubles and coming up around the waist and running people out off the freaking mat and running them on their backs. He's extremely aggressive, right? And he's using wrestling. I mean, those aren't jujitsu moves; those are wrestling moves. And then he gets, you know, people to the ground. But then, like in the Super 32, he did that. And why you don't want to do that, right, is that you're driving into somebody straight on, right, and then the person can let you come in, right? This is the whole push-pull thing, right? He's pushing, I just let him come in, and then I pop my hips, and then boom, he goes flying. Literally exactly what happened to him in Super 32. So, and you can't watch that clip and watch the guy lat drop somebody, lat drop Dorian. You can't watch that clip and be like, that wouldn't work in jiu-jitsu. Yes, it would. And it would put you right in Kazuri Keisugatami, okay? And if the guy turns away from you, he gives you his back, and now you take his back. If he doesn't and he turns into you, you wedge up under the shoulder blade like I've shown on my channel, and it's a very powerful move. For nothing else, you can go to side control or north-south from there, right, if you don't want to stay in Kazuri Keisugatami. So, by the way, too, I literally do 95% of the time I do gi jiu-jitsu. Okay, so when I'm talking about wrestling and everything, and that's me helping people, like, or after practice to take the gi top off, you know, and I'll wrestle with people and stuff, because they'll be like, what did you do when we were, you know, on the ground? And I'm like, oh, it's an outside single, and I shelf the leg, and then when you try to pull guard, you know, I smash past you or whatever. And then they're like, shit, like, can I learn that? And I'm like, that's wrestling. You know, that's not jujitsu. Now, I'm using it in a jiu-jitsu context because once I pass the guard, like, I'm not trying to pin you. Well, put your back flat on the mat if I can do it. If you give me your back, then great, right? So this can go into the next point, okay, which is what's called using circular reasoning to try to win an argument, okay? So circular reasoning, okay, is when an argument that comes back to its beginning without having proven anything, okay? And I'll give you an example of this one because there's some really good ones online. And or another definition is it's a logical fallacy in which the reasoner begins with what they're trying to end with, okay? So then it's like, so here, I'll give you an example. So circular reasoning in a psychiatric diagnosis. And it says, right, there's like an arrow. I'll put it up here right for you. Why does he have ADHD? Because he can't focus. Why can't he focus? Because he has ADHD. So why does he have ADHD? Because he can't focus. And you see it goes around and around. And so we've seen this argument played out in jiu-jitsu. You can't use wrestling in jiu-jitsu because it has no control, right? You can't use judo because it has no control. You can't throw people with these things. You can't, you know, you need an entirely new system. And then you're like, well, it looks like you're using wrestling. I mean, you're using wrestling to take people down to the ground. And in the gi, it looks like you're using judo to take people to the ground, you know, and old rules. But then people will be like, well, but I'm not using a leg lace. I'm not using a leg lace. It's not wrestling. And then I'm like, what? Where'd that come from? Like, leg lace? Like, who said that what wrestler is going to come into jiu-jitsu and try to leg lace anybody? That's not in the scoring system. Yeah, that's right, because it's not wrestling. And I'm like, well, I mean, but you're using wrestling to take people down. I mean, these moves are super old. There's only one way. You know, there's only so many ways to take a person down to the ground, you know, and if they don't have a jacket on, you're going to use a lot of wrestling to do it. And then it just looks sloppy. And then they say, well, it looks sloppy because it's not wrestling, it's jujitsu. And then it just goes around and around. It's not wrestling, it's jujitsu. You can't use wrestling, it doesn't have any control. Well, you took person down with control. Well, that's because I'm using jujitsu. And it's like, oh, get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? Like you're you're making a baseless claim because I can show the evidence that what you're doing is exactly what high school kids do by reaching with fucking collar ties. It's the same things that kids do, right? They're on a good shot on a single leg, and then they try to run the pipe and the guy doesn't fall down, and then they try to let go and kind of the waist, and you're like, no, don't fucking do that. You're going to lose it. And then how many times have we seen it? I can't even, honestly, I don't even know which clip to choose. Like, go to watch my ADCC and you'll see it. It doesn't work that well. Now, you can do it. Okay, and I am going to make a video on this. You can do a side body lock, but it's not how anybody in jiu-jitsu is using it. And they're not because they watch somebody do it like Kyle Dake, and then they're like, I can do that. And then you're like, but you're not, though. You're still pushing into them, and that's why you're getting launched by an Uchimata. These are all things that wrestlers know, right? And so you are trying to use wrestling to take people down. You're just not doing it well if you don't have like a classically trained wrestler. And this was my point of my video. Like, I'm not going to learn how to do jujitsu from a wrestler. That's why I came to jiu-jitsu. I wanted to learn jiu-jitsu. I did not come into jiu-jitsu trying to wrestle everybody. In fact, my gym, my former gym, didn't even fucking do stand-up. So that's why it was all newaza. It was all groundwork. It was all pulling guard and doing groundwork. But then guys who did competition were seeking me out to wrestle with them because on the mat, when we were already there, they try to pass my guard. They do a knee cut, right? I go to an outside single and then I shelf it and finish it. And they're like, what the fuck is that? You know, and then I show them, right? And then so like, then I'm like, well, we can do that from a standing position. And then this is how you get to it and all this kind of stuff. And so then like, I'm just bringing in what I know from wrestling and I'm trying to blend it with jiu-jitsu. So I'm not trying to tell you that one's better than the other, right? And then so what happens is, and this is the third point and probably the most important one, and I want people to really hear this, okay? People, I teach this stuff in my classes. One of the most amazing things about human beings is their analytical processing. But like we say in psychology, often our strengths are our weaknesses. Like, so for example, in a family, you guys will fight tooth and nail with each other. I mean, I don't play that game. I don't do it in my family, but some people do, right? And then my family's pretty cool about that. But they might fight tooth and nail, tooth and nail. And then it's like, but if an outsider comes in, everybody's like, whoa, it's like, who do you think you are? This is my family, right? That's tribalism, okay? So it's like, this is what happens to me. I'm not part of the club. I'm not part of the tribe. Well, at least people see me that way. I'm not part of your tribe. I'm just a wrestler who's just coming in and talking shit about jujitsu. No, that's not true. You're trying to win an argument with things that I'm not. Okay, I'm not just somebody coming in to jujitsu as a wrestler and telling you that you guys all suck. I'm not doing that at all. Okay, because I know very damn well, like when I rolled with Jordan Preisinger, when I was visiting him at his gym, you think that I thought that once that guy and I got to the ground that I was gonna kick his ass? I knew that that wasn't going to happen. The guy's like a freaking wet bar of soap. I couldn't get a hold of him. You know what I mean? Like I'm in his domain. I'm in his realm, right? Like, but he didn't like kick me out of the tribe kind of thing. But that's what happens. And like, I don't read things online. It's not good for you to do. You know, it's not good for you to listen to what people or read what people have to say a lot in an anonymous format where they can talk as much shit as they want, be wrong, and then what am I supposed to do? You know what I mean? Like even if people are wrong, am I supposed to come on there and tell them that they're wrong because then I look like an asshole? And so I can't win in that situation, so I don't read it. But I've had people send me posts or things and when I first started this, and unfortunately, I read it, and people are just like, "This is just some wrestler. He doesn't know what he's fucking talking about." And I'm like, "I haven't put a pair of wrestling shoes on in 4 years. That's not true. You know, I'm not just some wrestler." So, but it's easy to dismiss me, and that's why. See, that's why labels are created. People make labels to dismiss you. So, if you label me as just a wrestler, then everything I say is shit, right? And but like that's so. This is the basis of the fundamental flaw, I think, in human beings, right? Like, and we can learn to be better about these things, okay? But this is a fundamental flaw in human beings, like psychology, in that we create labels to dismiss people. It's the foundation of all bigotry, racism, right? How we separate people politically into different groups. Like, if you think this way, if you're on the right, you agree with all people on the right, and if you're on the left, you agree with all people on the left, right? And then if it's like with religion, oh, then you must think this and you must think that. And that's not true. People are people and they're allowed to be in the middle, right? I'm in the middle on like a lot of things. I really am. I'm on the middle on a lot of things. And because it's my job to communicate to people, that's all I'm trying to do. That's the whole reason I started this page in the first place, was to just try to communicate to you what I know from my experience in wrestling and offer that to people in jiu-jitsu to try to help them. Because like, I am not, even if you notice this, I do not go outside my area of expertise. I do not think it's a good idea. It's actually something that you learn while defending your PhD, like in an academic setting. You really learn how to do that. You learn not to talk about things that you're not an expert in. People ask me all the time about, well, what do I do up against the cage? And I say, that's not my expertise. I could, if I do it, I'm speculating, and I won't do it because I know, being an expert in a topic in academia, right? Like some of the things that I study, I feel comfortable defending those things because I know the literature and I can defend it. But as soon as you go shooting your mouth off about things that you don't know, or teaching things that you don't know, that's when people who are experts come in and go, that looks like shit, and that's and then we'll then learn from the expert then, right? And then once, and this is what I want, once BJJ has had the influence, the real influence, once we stop being tribalists and break the walls down and let the judokas come in and help, and let the wrestlers come in and help, right, where they feel welcomed to help, then it'll become where the person who's learned how to wrestle really well from a wrestler and learned judo really well from a judoka, now that person is capable of training other people. And like the people that I know who are really good, like in jiu-jitsu on their feet, had some wrestling training. Like, I mean, when I went and I trained with Jordan, like Jordan wrestled in high school in Canada. He did freestyle wrestling. So he's not completely new to this shit, you know what I mean? But then he's really, 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 really good at learning. Like, I can't, if I have any chance of beating that guy now that I'm hurt, like, and he's got a whole year to practice, then if I have a chance of beating that motherfucker, I have to stop training him because he learns so fast, because he's so willing to accept information and he's not tribal. Okay. So I think that that's how we want to be. I think that that's the goal, is that we don't want to be tribalists. We don't want to try to use strawman arguments and say that people are saying things that they're not, because that's not a way to win an argument. And we don't want to win an argument with circular reasoning, because what it means is that you're not listening to what anybody's saying. You're starting with the end point. Okay, there's a bunch of these very good examples of this online, right? Of how people start arguments with the beginning and an end point. It happens in politics, and then most people can't follow that it's circular reasoning, and you don't want to do that. Okay, so anyway, I just want to hope that you learn something, right? I'm just trying to teach. I hope that you learn something. And I love having conversations with people, and I love that people are DMing me and Instagram and asking me questions about the instructional. If they bought the instructional and then they're asking me questions about it, I am giving them free coaching. Okay, that's what I'm doing. Okay, so I give you my time, which is like for free, which is much better than, I think it has more value than a lot of things. Okay, and if you don't have to ask me, that's fine. If you don't want my time, or you don't think that I fucking know what I'm talking about, that's fine too. Okay, like, I'm not going to get my feelings hurt about it, right? So this is just me being me. This is who I am. I'm not, this isn't some fucking like facade. I don't have time for that shit. This is who I am. So I love helping people. If you like the channel, like, please subscribe. If you like the content, if you hit the notification bell, then anytime I put something up that's new, then you'll be notified of it. So thanks again for watching.